Welcome back. It has been a very long time, or it feels like a very long time at least, since our last Grappling Bulletin podcast, because it's been a very, very busy couple of weeks. Myself, Howell, Chase, and Corey back in the studio after a whirlwind couple of weeks there where we had three powerful events back to back, right?
Yeah, it was a great period, WNO, which feels like last year somehow, with Gordon Ryan and Jacob Couch kicked off a string. Then we had ADCC trials, and of course PANS most recently. Then last week we basically died and came back, and here we are. So,
hey, can you believe that it's been less than a month since Gordon Ryan versus Jacob Couch?
No, I can't.
How about you, Corey?
Yeah, like Chase said, it does feel like a decade ago.
It really does, right? It's funny. It's funny how the concept of time seems to sort of change so much. But I personally, I love it though. I love being busy. I love being, in the mix at all these events. And there were three very different, very fun events. The Who's Number One was, as always, just mind blowing because we had some great jiu-jitsu. We had some record setting performances. We had some just, amazing upsets and some great matches. ADCC trials. Man, I really wish that we had the opportunity to come back into the studio and to dissect that one fully, because that was something else altogether.
I still have so much footage that I just haven't gone over yet because there were a million great matches. I want to go back to the arena actually and just look at the brackets, because there are so many athletes that made it to the third and fourth round that just got kind of cut out before the medal rounds, and they had great showings too. So not only do we have incredible champions, but there were some definitely standout competitors that just didn't quite go far enough. But I mean, that just shows the level and the talents and that we've been talking about in the weeks leading up.
Those were some deep divisions. Like you say, you've got a lot of footage to go back through. Me too. I was filming all weekend with the 10th Planet crew, and let me tell you, that was an experience. That was a lot of fun. Literally shadowing guys like Eddie Bravo, Gio Martinez, Boogie Martinez, trials winners Keith Krikorian and Kyle Bain over the course of the 2 days of the ADCC trials. And quick shout out as well, 10th Planet, man. They had a very, very solid performance. Obviously qualifying two guys, the under 66 and the over 99 kilogram winners were Keith Krikorian and Kyle Bain. They're going to compete at the Worlds later this year. But that's really impressive, and I think that's probably one of the best performances for 10th Planet at such an event.
Yeah, I think the team overall performance was, like you said, the highest ever, and I think Keith Krikorian might be the feel-good story of the year, right? I mean, no one's grinded it out harder. 3 silver medals.
Wow.
No longer will he have to hear that being introduced. Right now, he's a trials champ.
Winner, yeah.
And, I mean, even up until the midnight hour, right, where he got his flight canceled and thought he couldn't make it.
I forgot about that.
His final shot at trials again. It was and then he had no sleep, straight onto the mats, having to go through an incredibly massive bracket. So, shout out to Keith and Kyle, but and all of our champs, really. So, yeah, trials was fun. A lot to go through.
Corey, any standout moments from trials?
I mean, we can go top to bottom, right? But I'm always surprised to watch Paul Ardea work.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because he comes out of the shadows, once every 2 years, runs through trials, submits everybody, and then he'll go into ADCC and do his thing there.
Yeah, Paul Ardea, man, what an amazing run that was. Under 99 kilogram winner, already an ADCC vet multiple time, but coming out and winning trials like that, reminding people he hasn't gone anywhere. And then PANS was incredible. For me, the story of PANS was Tynan Dalpra, flawless.
Yeah. I have been watching a lot of footage of Tynan, right? Got a little project coming soon. Hopefully by the end of this week, you guys will see an all-access style piece, going through the bracket, hanging out with Guy and the rest of the AOJ team. But, I mean, he's been one of the key themes for the IBJJF since last year when he got promoted to black belt, or actually 2020, the end of 2020 he got it,
right.
Very end, and then into 2021. And yeah, he just looks flawless. I mean, I don't know what to say.
It's amazing. It's really, really special watching him do his thing, because he is just this combination of precision technique, incredible focus, just unmatchable discipline, and some serious physical prowess as well. And you just combine all those factors together, and you have, for me, one of the very best gi players in the world right now. Obviously, one of the biggest talking points that came out of PANS was the fact that there were so many closeouts in the black belt divisions, and there was a response that came very shortly after that, and we're going to get into that later today, because we're going to have a really big, in-depth discussion about IBJJF rule changes. But first, we've got some news to tackle. So let's bring up today's topics and we can work through these because there's some news to cover before we get to the big stuff. And we'll start off, just work our way down like we always do. Number one, Bushasher is going to return and he has an MMA fight lined up this weekend, Friday night. He is going to face off with the fearsome Rugrug, Umar Kane from Senegal. This guy is an absolute beast. Not many people can stand toe-to-toe and be physically outmatched by, or not be physically outmatched by Bushasher, because Bushasher is a solid 6'3.5", 265 pounds. The guy is just a freak athlete. Rugrug is exactly 6'4", 265 pounds. These guys are going to be very well matched off against each other. And this, of course, is Bushasher's third MMA fight with a perfect 2-0 record so far, 2 first-round submissions. But Rugrug is a different animal altogether, right? Let's talk a little bit about what kind of opponent Rugrug is.
Well, he's got a very unique grappling background, right? Senegalese wrestling. I haven't had a chance to see a lot of it, but there have been some cool highlights that have popped up on YouTube and other places where, I mean, it's a really competitive, legitimate grappling style. It's, I think, the pride of the nation, right? Like, it's I think he's a celebrity, if I remember correctly.
Huge
yeah,
stars
he's a
in
massive
Senegal,
star.
Yeah. It's a weird combination of like boxing with takedowns. There's no wrestling on the ground, but the style of the Senegalese wrestling is they basically, it's as close to bare knuckle because they just have like leather wraps on their hands, and you'll see them throwing punches, and then they'll enter into a clinch, and they will sometimes just launch each other through the air. And these are big, powerful men. So, like you say, very unorthodox style of grappling, but that's not to say that it's not ineffective.
No, he's currently 3-1 right now in his professional MMA career. I don't know what his Senegalese record is, but I'm guessing if it was good enough to catch the eye of one, then he was probably pretty dominant over there as well, thinking he could have a shot in MMA.
Yeah.
I think grappling enthusiasts are definitely watching this one, right? All eyes have been on Bushasher's MMA career since it launched, and now he's 2-0 with very dominant wins throughout that time, right?
Oh, yeah. No, man,
That's short time, rather. It's only been a few months. But
Bushasher's transition to MMA has been about as good as you could possibly hope for, because there's always the question, isn't there, about what happens when a high-level black belt, a guy who has more accolades in gi than no gi, transitions to MMA. Sometimes that learning curve can be very, very steep. But of course, he did it the smart way. He went to American Top Team. He was training there for a long, long time prior to making his debut. And he had 2 matches last year, 2 fights. And as we said, 2 first-round submissions in just, dominant fashion. But that said, there's no guarantee that things are going to go the same way against somebody like Rugrug. But it's going to be exciting to see it unfold, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. And because Bushasher started out his MMA career with, in a smart way and in the most dominant way possible, taking guys down, getting directly to the mount, to side control, to an arm triangle, and finishing his way there. This is going to be a real test for him as somebody who has a grappling pedigree. Now, maybe not a traditional grappling pedigree, but nonetheless, he has some grappling talents.
Yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing match. It's one that I'm excited to see. Obviously, we've been following Bushasher's career very, very closely since it began. He's pretty much the greatest jiu-jitsu competitor currently active in MMA, and we're excited to see how that goes. But we have a quick interview from Bushasher. We caught up with him at PANS. He was there in Orlando, Florida to watch his friends. Of course, he lives in South Florida now, so he drove up to watch his buddies, Leandro, his teammates like Adam Wodzinski and Jansen Gomez, and these guys compete at PANS and hang out with his friends. And he had some words to say about his upcoming MMA fight. Let's take a listen to the man himself.
Yeah, it's gonna be my third MMA fight. This fight's gonna be the first time against a grappler. So the first 2 fights I was against good strikers, and I did my strategy to take them down really fast, and I did it. So this one, I don't know how it's gonna be to take him down. So probably gonna strike a little bit more in this one. I have to put my stand-up in tests, but it's been fun. I'm going out there and I have a good time. I don't feel the pressure as I did it fighting jiu-jitsu. The worst final I think was much more pressure than what I'm doing now, and I'm having fun. That's what what I can say about him. Being honest, I really think too much about my opponent. I never did in Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not gonna do MMA. I think about my game, what I have to do. That's my strategy. So of course, at the end of the day, everybody knows what I'm trying to do, to use my Jiu-Jitsu. So doesn't matter who I'm fighting. If I fight like the best striker in the world, if I'm fighting the best grappler in the world, at the end of the day, I'm always gonna trust my Jiu-Jitsu. But of course, it's to get there, I need to be like able to put everything correct, not just the Jiu-Jitsu, but the walking, the striking, my footwork, everything. So it's not, people think that, oh, just go there and shoot a double leg and that's it. No, it's way more difficult than that. And as you guys can see, it's a lot of work that I'm putting on. And every day I get more comfortable. Every day I get more like comfortable to strike. Watching the fight against like yesterday, like Durinho against the guy like Shimaev, Durinho is a Jiu-Jitsu guy that now he's a complete MMA fighter. So he just depends on the Jiu-Jitsu. So I think that's the evolution. It's not just about go there and fight Jiu-Jitsu. At the end of the day, when they get on top, you need to do everything. So it was great to see like how his evolution. So it's somewhere where I want to get there, I need to evolve and be a complete MMA fighter in all the areas.
MMA, well, freestyle wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's rare to see somebody come from another style of grappling, even judo or what have you, and perform as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point.
Yeah, so, but that's not to say that it can't be effective. And if you see some of his previous matches or previous fights, yeah, he's Rugurug's no joke, man. He is no joke. Double check the sound for us, please, if you would, Tyler. Make sure we can come back. So, moving on. Nicholas Muragali is training for the World Championships. And this is news because Nicholas Muragali was unceremoniously booted out of the 2021 IBJJF World Championships. If you remember, you may have seen, but there was a moment in a match, Chase, that cost him a chance at not one, but 2 gold medals that weekend. Right?
Really? I forgot about that.
Yeah, educate fans for us, if you would, please.
It's one of the wildest things I've seen in person at a jiu-jitsu championship. And, of course, he gave the finger, flipped the bird to a heckler in the stands, finished the match with a win, and then was retroactively DQ'd by the IBJJF for breaking the conduct rules that they have.
Unsportsmanlike conduct, I think it was called, yeah.
Yeah, so that cost him not only his chance at his weight category, but the absolute. Nicholas maintains that he is actually captured for titles as a black belt. He doesn't acknowledge those DQs.
Counts them as wins. I like that.
But
yeah.
In any case, he's announced that he's going to try and pull it off one more time.
He's come back. Bring up this photo if you would, please, because this was pretty remarkable to see as well. So this is Nicholas Muragali back in the gi for the first time since, we believe, around about December when he competed at Worlds, because for the last couple of months, Muragali has been training with John Danaher and the New Wave Jiu-Jitsu team right here in Austin, Texas, and he has been training no gi. He made his no gi debut in March on Who's Number One, and so that was a successful match, a submission win against Arnaldo Maidana. Muragali, it seems that he will return to compete at Worlds, but of course, you can't go to Worlds without training in the gi, right? And Danaher is going to be the one sort of helping supervise those training sessions. We can play a little clip of Muragali just training in the gi. This was part of the dream art World's training camp, just days before the World Championships. You can see some of the drills and such that those guys use as part of their professional training sessions. But Corey, I want to get your opinion on Muragali coming back to compete in the gi after the last couple of months. How do you see this playing out?
I mean, I think if anything, losing in the way he did, being disqualified, has only kind of sparked him up, right? Muragali is the kind of person that is motivated by a specific type of defeat, and that's one that he'll definitely carry, especially because he was on track to win that event. Already a 2-time world champion. If you talk to him, already a 4-time world champion. But I think this extra one and the absolute title, which he's been seeking for as long as he's been a black belt, he's going to be incredibly motivated this year to capture it.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I feel that Muragali, it seems like there's unfinished business here, right? It feels like he's not going out without that absolute gold medal.
Oh yeah, he wants it. He really does, and I think that motivation alone makes things interesting. But what I really want to know is what that room looks like with Danaher and the guys right now, because you have to think there's a little bit more of a reciprocal nature to the instruction going on. Muragali, extremely successful, among the most successful black belt gi competitors today.
Already a 2-time world champions of black belt.
Very much clued in on all the requirements and tactics that you need at that level for the IBJJF, where John has not been focused on that in a very long time, if ever. So I think there's going to be some incredible game planning going on, as well as technical, right? John's a very accomplished instructor. Gi, no gi, doesn't matter. MMA,
and a great strategist,
and always watching, right? That's one thing that Gordon has always talked about. Anybody that's trained under John Danaher is that he is an expert basically in all forms of combat.
Yeah, studies everything.
You know, whether it's wrestling or judo or jiu-jitsu, you name it. So I think, to me, it's a fascinating experiment that I hope we get a little insight to soon enough.
Speaking of insight, Danaher made a post, and you can bring that photo up again if you would, please, Tyler, because this is it's a pretty deep room. But of course, you know, the Danaher New Wave Jiu-Jitsu squad is more known for training no-gi. So when we saw this photo, and you can see Danaher in the center there, you've got Muragali on one side, Giancarlo Bordoni on there. That's Bruno Lima at the back in the white gi as well, actually. Travis Moore at the front, and then you know, those are some high-level black belts right there. But Muragali, Bordoni, and Bruno Lima, 3 world-class black belts, all successful in IBJJF. Like you say, I think there's going to be an interesting exchange between them. But Danaher made this comment that Muragali has one of the most exciting gi games he's ever seen, full of technical nuance, some beautiful original moves, and that unmistakable Brazilian flair for movement and opportunity that characterizes so many of the top athletes from that nation. I think that's a very Danaher-esque way to sort of summarize Muragali's grappling game. But yeah, it's quite poetic in a way. But anybody who's seen Muragali compete, I'm sure they'll agree, right, Corey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that's, I think, one of the things that makes Danaher leading this room such an interesting thing to watch is that Danaher took Gordon with all of his skills and his knack for submission and his knack for his intent for the finish, and kind of built Gordon's game around that, driving him towards the finish. If Muragali is motivated by the same thing, which we know he is, watching John Danaher strategize how to implement Muragali's game in this IBJJF rule set he knows so well can create this interesting, maybe new version of Nicholas Muragali.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think the fans are probably going to be excited as well. Muragali in the gi is always a big deal, but going back to the World Championships, with that mission of getting the double gold, that's huge. Well, from Muragali to Gordon Ryan, one of the other biggest names in the sport. We've hit the trifecta today. We went from Bushasher to Muragali to Gordon Ryan in the space of a few minutes. And Gordon Ryan, man, that guy just does not stop making money. This is incredible. So, if you didn't see last week, Gordon Ryan released his first ever NFT. What is an NFT, Chase? You're going to Google it real quick. It is a non-fungible token.
Yes.
And the best way to describe it is that it is a digital asset. And a lot of fun has been made of NFTs over the last months since they came on. I mean, when did NFTs even come out? Does anybody even remember?
I don't know the first example of NFT.
Yeah, like
but
mid last year or something.
I feel like they hit peak public awareness like last summer, right? When,
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, NFTs, they came out. Everybody saw those pictures of cartoon monkeys with like sunglasses or laser eyes or whatever. Big deal, right? Well, of course, there was a lot of fun made about how NFTs were basically a scam or what have you, or just money laundering. There's all kinds of theories about NFTs. But since they came out, people have actually found real-world applications for NFT technology, and Gordon has dropped an NFT that actually contains some real-world value to it, because the NFT that he was selling grants you lifetime access from the point of purchase to every single video instructional that he's going to put out on BJJ Fanatics from here on out. So for the price of one Ethereum, which is about $3,000 right now, the exchange, roughly, you can have access to every single Gordon instructional from here on out for as long as you retain possession of that NFT, which I think actually could probably pay for itself pretty quickly if you think about the value of Gordon's DVDs and how many he puts out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting, right? And it's I mean, I'm not very dialed into the crypto space, but I know the term use case is very popular and one of the relevant attributes that people look at when evaluating an asset, and this actually has some practical value. You get the instructional, so that's pretty cool. I think Gordon definitely has a knack for generating some income, and this is just one more way. And it's credit to him for making it work and also providing value to people, to his customers or fans.
See, anytime I see or hear NFT, I usually shudder and I'm kind of like, oh, but this is the first time I actually saw an NFT and I'm like, wow. I mean, I'm not going to drop $3,000, unfortunately. I don't have that kind of, just a spare Ethereum just lying around for this, but I'm sure I'm actually certain that many people are willing and prepared to do this, because he sold over 40 NFTs in about 36 hours. That's over $100,000 worth of sales right there in the first 36 hours. Like I said, Gordon, whether it's $100,000 sponsorships for his ADCC super fight later this year or $100,000 on selling NFTs, Gordon just knows how to make money. Any thoughts on this, Corey?
I will be dropping my own NFT next month.
Boom! You heard it here first.
Let's
get on the waiting list now, guys.
For the price of 2 Ethereum, you can get free access to Grappling Bulletin podcast every week.
Bargain.
Smart, very smart.
Love it.
I'm gonna counter program you and release my own for 1 Ethereum.
There you have it. So, well, that's it from the news roundup. Let's look forward. Let's look forward to BJJ Stars 8, which is coming up April 30th. You can watch it live here on FloGrappling. If you're in Brazil, you'll have to watch it on the BJJ Stars website. But anywhere else in the world, you'll be able to live stream or watch it on demand right here on FloGrappling.com. And it is a stacked lineup. Why don't we run through, first of all, let's take a look at the GP, shall we, Chase? Who we got? The 8-man Gi Grand Prix.
Yeah, let's pull up that graphic, Tyler, if we can. That is the one there, I believe. And yeah, it's a fantastic lineup. We've got Leandro Lo, Zaki Bahayens, Leo Laura, Mika Galvao, Pedro Machado, Roberto Jimenez, Lucas Hulk Barbosa, and Mauricio Oliveira. Now that is an outstanding mix of legendary figures, of course, like Leandro Lo, as well as the next generation, Mika Galvao, Pedro Machado, Roberto, plus Zaki and Lucas Hulk. And, I mean, all these guys are incredible, right? And so...
Yeah, it is. You got 3 world champions in that lineup right there. You got Leandro, Isaac Bayens, and Lucas Hulk. 3 IBJJF world champions. And as you mentioned, you got some up-and-comers. Pedro Machado literally made his black belt IBJJF debut in a major tournament just last week at PANS. And Roberto Jimenez, who is thankfully back in the gi after quite a long time off. And the phenomenon himself, Mikael Galvao. And then the 2, for me, very disruptive presences as well of Leo Lara and Mauricio Oliveira. 2, some might even say, dark horses.
Oh, yes. I love it. And it's hard to pick what might be my dream matches, right? Because I want to mix and match all the way through. But
actually, yeah, you're right. There's any combination of those 8 could be really, really intriguing matches.
I am convinced, though, that you're lying if your first answer isn't Mika Galvao versus Leandro Lo.
Hell yeah, I want to see
That's
that
the match. We got to see it.
Hell
We
yeah, I
gotta
want to see that match. Actually, I mean, you're right. Any combination of those matches would be really, really nice. But there's just one that I want to point out, actually. It's got a little bit of history there. That's Mika Galvao and Mauricio Oliveira. Because if you remember correctly to the BJJ Stars No-Gi Grand Prix last year, well, that was a bit of an upset, right, Corey?
Yeah, I think everybody had Mika, had high expectations for Mika coming in, but Mauricio kind of stonewalled him and shut down a lot of his attacks, ended up winning by, I think, 2 points.
Yeah, that's correct. It was. So took him out of that GP first round, and I think people were genuinely shocked. But yes, it goes to show anything can happen. Yeah, you're right. Any combination of those matches would be really exciting. You know, Roberto versus Mika, Leandro versus Hulk, Hulk versus Izaki, Roberto. Oh man, just all of them, incredible. We'll do some more breakdowns next week, I expect. But the no-gi matches as well. Now these are interesting because they're going to be using ADCC rules, correct?
That's correct. And a quick note before we move on, though, the GP and the GI will also have some new rules that we should touch on real quick, which is they're basically anti-stalling rules, right? And we talked about this a little bit, but it's a topic that is continuing to be a top of mind for jiu-jitsu athletes, so it's worth mentioning again. And that's they're going to limit the time spent in 50-50. I want to say it's either 20 or 30 seconds. Can you guys correct me on that?
20, I believe, yeah.
And they will be, I want to say, stood up with no grips, right? That's the rule?
So you're kind of combining two rules together there, because there's the anti-lapel rule, which is if you aren't using any, if you're not using it to attack, they're going to basically restart you without the grips. And then there is the 50-50, which would be a neutral restart if there's no action after 20 seconds. Yeah. So, but that's great because they want to keep the action moving. They understand that in these matches, you know, it's a show, it's entertainment, it's a professional event. So they want good matches. They don't want people getting tied up in those positions, which, as I mentioned in this morning's Grappling Bulletin article, the 50-50 with Lapel took an already shitty position and made it even worse. So that jiu-jitsu purists and even the most ardent of lapel players genuinely hate the 50-50 with lapel guard because it's impossible to get out of.
You're basically trapped. Yeah.
Trapped, yeah. And, you know, so luckily the BJJ Stars has taken the initiative and getting rid of that. But anyway, enough of the lapel stuff. So what about the ADCC Rules Super Fights?
That's right. They have a bevy of great super fights. We have got a graphic here, I think. And kicking things off, I actually don't know if I can see him on this one, but we have Damian Maia versus Cowboy Oliveira.
Oh, that's
right. Has been
right.
added since this graphic was made. That's a really, I think it's Damian's first grappling match in, 15 years, what I saw, something like that?
Maybe since ADCC.
2007, that's right.
Wow,
Yep.
literally 15 years. Incredible.
So that's pretty crazy. Cowboy Oliveira, a current UFC fighter, super entertaining. Then we have Felipe Pena in the mix with Henrique Sacconi. My pick for maybe most exciting match that may not catch people's eye right away is Gutenberg versus Felipe Andrew. I feel like that one is going to be a banger. Fabricio Andre versus Alex Sodre is in the mix. We've got Bia Mesquita and Julia Boscher. Marcos Pecho versus Lucas Portasio. And then Thais Luerio versus Mariana Rozolt.
Wow, man, that's a powerful lineup right there. I love the fact that BJJ Stars are introducing the no-gi matches. Very excited to see the return of Damian Maia, but there's some interesting implications to these matches as well, right? Because under ADCC rules, you have a lot of people in the mix there that are qualified for ADCC and will be competing at the World Championships in September. Of course, Felipe Pena is coming back, and he's doing the over 99 kilogram division because he wants to take out Gordon. You have Henrique Sacconi. He qualified by winning the second South American trials in the under 99 kilo division. Gutenberg won the over 99 kilogram division. Fabricio Andre, under 66 kilogram trials winner. Bia Mesquita returning. She's a past ADCC champion. So for me, I think this is really interesting because you can see people are out there and they're wanting to, I'm not saying it's not a tune-up, right? But they're looking to get valuable experience ahead of the World Championships later this year. And Corey, we identified that this is actually Felipe Pena's first no-gi match in how long?
This is his first match, his first no-gi match since his no-gi match against Andre Galvao at ADCC 2019.
Wow.
So we're looking at 2.5 years.
Yeah. So yeah, he's definitely going to want to get back into the momentum of things before the World Championships in September, because I mean, like we said, he's moving up, right? He's going up to over 99 kilos. And of course, Felipe Pena, he won gold in 2017 in the absolute division and the under 99 kilogram division. And excuse me, no, he didn't. He did so in the absolute division. He never won his weight class. I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up. He took silver in 2015, silver in 2017 in the weight classes, but won the absolute gold in 2017. But after the super fight against Galvao in 2019, of course, Pena was back in the mix to compete in we thought originally the under 99 kilogram division, but no. He decided to go up in weight, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a ripple, right? He's chasing Gordon there. That match could happen. Those two have been going at it for years now. But really, it's the timeline here that is kind of mind-boggling because Felipe barely had any matches in 2019 either, right? We say it's not like he had a busy season. He had Kasai where he won a couple matches and then ended up losing by a heel hook to Tex Johnson, and then his loss to Andre Galvao, and that was it as far as no-gi is concerned. And we haven't seen him until now. So there's been a lot of growth in his career and techniques since then, of course.
Also a lot of MMA training.
And MMA training is in the mix now.
Because Pena took the default gold in the absolute division at the IBJJF World Championships in December after that final with Muragali was cancelled due to the DQ. But it's interesting to note that Pena said that would be his last IBJJF Gi World Championships. And he was saying that he's going to focus this year on competing no-gi and MMA, preparing for, of course, ADCC, but he's going to make a transition to MMA at some point as well. So you got to think that he's been busy training for that, and that will help him going into ADCC, right? So much no-gi, so much wrestling and such, but it's kind of a little bit, it's hard to say. I mean, Felipe is an amazing technician, but momentum matters and consistency matters, and he hasn't been competing that much, right, Corey?
No, but I think he's still obviously got what it takes to compete at ADCC. He's incredibly dialed in. He's always been very successful in that rule set. I think training in MMA will only kind of help. His wrestling has stood out in his little time doing ADCC. This is where Felipe Pena shines. So not surprised if he kind of ramps it up, and this is a great way to do it at BJJ Stars to kind of get the momentum going.
You know, I'm just watching the highlights that we put together here from his 2017 ADCC run, and I'm just reminded about how smooth his technique is.
Right? Oh, it's beautiful, right? And it's super aggressive. He's just a heat-sinking missile there for the back. Felipe has always had a lot of success at ADCC, and I think this is a hopefully start of a runway, right, at BJJ Stars, when we might see him 2 or 3 more times, even before ADCC.
I hope so.
As he starts to really dial in his competition strategies.
Well, let's talk about the match with Sacconi, because Sacconi won the ADCC trials. He actually lost the first South American trials. That was the ones in Balneario Camboriú, and then he returned a week later to win the trials in Sao Paulo. So there's a guy who's obviously got the physical stamina and endurance to go through 2 very tough tournaments in back-to-back weekends. Took silver in the first and took gold in the second. And, well, for my money, you know, physically very powerful. Technically, I don't think he's anywhere close to Felipe Pena, because Felipe Pena is one of the very best technicians in the world. There are few people on that level. But the physicality plus the... he's not a very nice guy when he competes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Very go forward, very aggressive, and he's going to go after Felipe Pena. So for me, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a tough test of Felipe Pena in that respect. But I think whatever happens in this match will give us a clear indication of how things look for ADCC, right?
Right. I mean, it would be, even with Sacconi's ADCC trials win, I think it would still be a shocking upset for Felipe to lose in this case. But let's see exactly the content of this match. What does it look like? Is it a dominant win for Felipe, or does Sacconi pull off the upset, or is it somewhere in the middle, right? So I'm curious to see what both athletes look like.
Me too. I'm excited for that, and I'm excited for every other no-gi super fight and the GP all going down April 30th, BJJ Stars 8. Watch it here on FloGrappling. So that's pretty much it for the news roundup and the preview of one of the big upcoming events that we have here on FloGrappling. Of course, that's not the only event that we have coming up on FloGrappling. We have many. We have Toro Cup 20, April 30th. We have the ADCC European, Middle East, and African trials going down on May 7th in Poland. Finishers only, Survivor Series 2, a quintet-style no-gi event, May 29th. And then the very beginning of June 1st through 5th, the IBJJF World Championships. So the Worlds. This is what we're going to talk about today, like the big discussion topic, because last week, was it last week? Feels so much longer ago. Yeah. Last week at PANS, 4 of the 10 black belt adult male finals ended via closeout. And what is a closeout? A closeout is basically a gentleman's agreement. It's when 2 teammates or friends come together in the finals and they don't want to fight each other. So they decide, hey, I'm going to take the gold. You're going to take the gold. Let's shake hands. Just raise one person's hand in victory, and that's it. No match takes place. They just decide amongst themselves who's going to take the gold. And you'll see them step up on the podium. They'll often share the top spot together, or they'll exchange places and each have a moment in holding the gold medal. But only one name gets written down as the official champion. But they call that closing out. And 4 out of 10 finals went down that way last weekend. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to call anybody out. It's something that's happened in jiu-jitsu forever. Closeouts have been a part of the culture of jiu-jitsu for as long as anybody can remember. And for the first time in history, there was an actual reaction against this, because there have been many other tournaments where we've had closeouts. But for the first time I can ever remember, there was a genuine feeling of dissatisfaction amongst fans, amongst industry insiders, and even amongst some athletes themselves. They were like, man, that's no good. Like, we wanted to see the finals, we wanted to fight, we wanted to compete, and it seems that the public opinion has kind of swayed in the other direction.
Yeah, I was honestly a little surprised by the backlash. Closeouts, as you mentioned, aren't new. Oftentimes we will see 3. 4 is a lot, but we'll see up to 3 or maybe 4 closeouts in a black belt category amongst the men and women. So I kind of, when at the event, was just, no, this is business as usual. But I'm not upset at the reaction. I think, as many have pointed out, for the sport to grow, to go forward, it needs to sort of eliminate this change, and the IBJJF has taken steps to do that. They're technically still allowed. There are just some penalties put in place now for ranking points and for cash prizes.
Yeah, let's explain that actually. So this is important to note that the IBJJF responded to the closeouts. They've since clarified, saying that the plans were always in place. So it wasn't necessarily, wasn't necessarily a direct reaction to what happened at PANS, that this was always going to be the case. But they've announced that any closeouts at the World Championships in June will result in the forfeiture of prize money and the points gained by the athletes. Because the prize money can range from anything from $7,000 to $10,000, depending on the size of the division in the male adult black belt divisions. And the points, well, they matter for 2 things. Because number 1, the ranking points determine your seed in future events when they make the brackets. And number 2, they count towards the overall team race at the tournament as well. So teams will be leaving points on the table if they close out. You know, whereas they could have had a first and second place finish and had the points for both of those, they'll basically get 0. So
3 things.
3 things?
Individual ranking points, which leads to
overall season prize as well.
$20,000 as well on the line for that.
Good point. There you go. So it wasn't a rule, an outright ban on closeouts, but it was about as strong method of dissuading people from closing out as you can come up with, right? Well, I think what's most interesting to note is that the reaction from people was great. But the IBJJF showed their willingness to change these rules. The reaction among the community was great. What other rules can we get changed while we're at it, right? Because jiu-jitsu rules, there are lots of them. There are many, many jiu-jitsu rules that people don't like, right? And this was just, it opened the floodgates. And we heard so many comments from different people from all levels, from world champion black belts to just average fans and everything in between. And they're all coming out with suggestions. They're like, what about this? What about this? What about this? So what we're going to do, we're going to pick 5 possible rule changes, discuss the pros and cons and the likelihood of them taking place. And we'll start off with teammates being seeded to meet first or second rounds. So that would be the first one. Bring it up if you would for us, Tyler, so people can see. So this is something that would eliminate closeouts completely, because if teammates are seeded to meet first or second rounds, then that means that there's no way that teammates can meet in the final. Corey, thoughts on that?
Yeah, and for me, this comes down to, even if there's a closeout here, that's a decision that's made early enough that it doesn't impact the matches that we want to see, right? The semifinals and the finals, the matches that matter, the matches that have the highest stakes. You know, when we tune into Pans or to Worlds or to whatever it is, we want to watch the final because there's high implications. It's the best athletes of the day. So if we have teammates meet in the first or second round and one person decides, I'm going to let you move on, fine. We at least don't lose the final. We don't lose the semifinal. To me, there's only pros in that outcome.
Now, some organizations already do this. ADCC, for
Notably,
example.
ADCC.
Yeah.
Yes. I also have to agree, of course, assessment on that one. It makes logical sense. You want to get rid of a closeout? Well, then let's prevent it from taking place in the most important matches, finals and semifinals.
It certainly would be the most logical and the easiest solution to combating this problem.
It will get messy, though, and this feeds maybe into another point we might have coming up here, but when you have 4 to 6 teammates on these different levels of team, the B team, the C team.
Absolutely. Let's get to that in a second, because I feel like the Worlds will be a test for this. Because let's see how many people are willing to leave that prize money and the points on the table. Because if they've came up with this ruling to dissuade people from closing out the finals, what happens if we get to the finals and people are like, don't worry about it, it's my bro, I'm not going to fight him, you know? And they're like, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, I can do without it. Team points, sorry guys, I'm not fighting him, and just won't. And if that happens and we still get denied the finals, then maybe we'll see IBJJF take maybe more direct action, and that's where the seeding will come in. But you make a good point. Let's bring up the second one. So another suggestion that we saw was a possible limit on the number of athletes per team in the same division. And, well, as you kind of started saying, sometimes those teams, they load them up, right? The brackets.
Yeah, and it benefits both the federation and the teams, right? The federation gets more athletes in their brackets, and more participation means more revenue for them. But also the teams get, more of their guys a shot at winning Worlds, and it may not count towards the official team ranking. I mean, it usually does. They usually have their A-list guys representing the main banner. But still, if someone pushes through, then they still have, let's say, the B team guy with a gold medal. So, is it likely to happen? I don't know, but I personally would love to see something like this take place. I don't know if you would ever see it at Pans or Worlds, but if there was to be a pro league of some kind, that would be the best. I mean, ADCC is the best example, right? You sort of have
it's invite only.
It's invite only. There's 16 people in a bracket, and if you're a teammate, you face in the first or second round.
So here's something interesting that I pulled out as well. And you're right, in that technically, they're not all the same team. But through a little administrative trick, teams are able to enter sometimes up to 6 competitors in a single division, because they technically have an A team, a B team, and a C team. So what you'll see is, for example, you'll have Team A, or you'll have to say Team Jiu-Jitsu, Team International, Team so-and-so.
Well, it's like FloGrappling A, B, and C. You would be on the C team, and then Corey and I would be on the FloGrappling, and you'd be FloGrappling C.
Thank you very much. I have my own team, thank you. Well, through that method, Alliance had 5 guys registered in the middleweight division in a division of 24 people. So they actually had just over 20% of all competitors in that division were representing Alliance. And luckily, we didn't see any closeouts in that specific division, but that's a lot. And you're right, it's an open tournament. Anybody can sign up so long as they're paying their entrance fee. There's no limit to the amount of people per team. And it's only if we had an actual qualification process for these events, or they were invite only, that I think we could start capping the numbers. So I don't see it as a feasible solution to put limits on the number of teams per division, unless we were talking about a pro league or something like that. So the other one that I saw called for a lot were 6-minute matches. Let's move on to the next one. 6-minute matches. A lot of people don't like 10 minutes. They think it's too long. Corey, Thoughts on that one?
So my first take on this is always to think about the divisions which have 6-minute matches, right? And that's blue belt divisions, which for me are always the most exciting to watch. But I think a lot of that is because those athletes are just a little bit reckless and they make some mistakes that the black belts and the pros would never make. 6-minute matches do maybe give us a little bit less time, but I think the athletes who are going to stall are still going to stall, whether it's a 6-minute match or a 25-minute match. It's about what can be enforced within that 6 or 10 minutes. I think given the 10 minutes, there's more opportunity to penalize the athletes, although in a 6-minute match, let's say you have stalling calls. I think the stalling calls would need to be a lot more aggressive in order to be effective. So pair that 6-minute match with aggressive stalling calls, every 15 seconds of an action or something like that, and I'm all for it. But the stalling penalties have to be commensurate with the length of time the match takes.
That's a great point. There's a couple of arguments for 6-minute matches. They're shorter, they're more fan-friendly in terms of the viewing experience. There's also the fact that athletes can go out, they can go hard for 6 minutes, and they don't have to keep so much in the gas tank knowing that it's a 10-minute grueling match ahead of them, or many of those 10-minute matches in a day. And it's easier to go harder for a shorter round, such as 6 minutes. The other thing is, of course, that a 6-minute match, you can have more 6-minute matches in the space of a day. So a tournament could actually run more matches in the space of a day. There's that argument too. But one big argument against 6-minute matches is the fact that a 2016 study that we commissioned actually showed that 6-minute matches result in two things: lower scores and less submissions. And the reason being is because it is hard to score on somebody in jiu-jitsu. And a 6-minute match, if you've ever competed in a 6-minute match, or if you've ever done a 6-minute round in the gym, they can go by pretty quick. And sometimes it does take a while to get the jiu-jitsu going, to break down your opponents and to manage to score on them. And the same goes for submissions. That submissions, not always, but they can sometimes come in the latter part of a match after you're able to successfully dominate, wear out, tire your opponent and get them to the point of submission. And in 6 minutes, I've spoken to many, many black belt competitors who have said, man, I just couldn't get my game going. It just wasn't enough time. Now, maybe that's a result of their jiu-jitsu and the style of jiu-jitsu that they play, and they're more used to pacing themselves for a 10-minute match. But it's an argument. It's an argument. It's not the reason, but I'm just saying it is an argument. But I'll be honest, I don't think that there's a great argument for changing the length of black belt matches right now, because the truth is, if you want to compete in 6-minute matches, you can go find federations that offer that.
Yeah, AJP I think was 6, possibly even down to 5.
So,
am I wrong about that?
6 or 5.
I know it was 6, I want to say. I see the value in it, especially given a tournament format, but we do see at things like WNO where we have a 15-minute match, as long as it's a super fight, we do see most of those matches being decently paced, right?
Right.
But the tournament factor in 10-minute matches for sure has people being a little more conservative, knowing that they could have a grueling slog ahead. But as Corey pointed out, I think ultimately the stalling calls should be a little more present in the matches.
Aggressive. That's what we need.
Aggressive.
Aggressive stalling calls.
And the athletes are going to, who want to stall or feel like they have to stall, are going to find a way, no matter if it's 6 minutes, no matter if we have 50-50 band or not, they're going to find another way. They're going to play the edges. They're going to do anything they can. That's
jiu-jitsu.
And I'm not like mad at these athletes. I know I sound rather critical at this point, but I've been tired in a match and I've done my best to stall too. Like, I'm going to put my hand up. Like, sometimes that moment happens, right?
Hell yeah.
But I think it's on the tournament organizers to know that that's kind of a behavior that's going to take place, and to sort of find ways to negate it the best they can.
Fair point. Yeah. Fair point. Personally, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Let's talk about the next rule, the hated lapel 50-50 guard, the worst position in all of jiu-jitsu. Really, there's nothing worse. Lapel 50-50. And I was talking about this with somebody the other day. It's actually the guy who runs the Instagram account, Lapel Players. And even he was saying that this is the worst thing ever, because people genuinely don't really use lapel 50-50 to score. They use it to tie somebody up and they use them to stall. And I said that absolutely, Like literally, if I see somebody playing lapel 50-50 guard when I'm at the tournament, I walk away. I am just like, no way. I'm not staying to watch this. This is just pointless at this point. I'm not filming it. I'm not doing whatever. I'm not covering this match. Screw you guys. I'm walking away because there is nothing to be gained from playing lapel 50-50. I'm sorry. It just isn't. It's a bullshit position. And if you want to do it, that's fine. But just know that nobody wants to watch it. Simple as that. But 50-50 guard already had a bad reputation. People have been calling for banning the 50-50 guard for years. Some people came up with some pretty good answers for 50-50. There's footlock attacks you can go for from there. There are even arm bars you can go for from there. And, it's a position that at least has some options. But the lapel 50-50 takes away all of that.
It's pretty miserable, I gotta say. Like you, when you see it happening, and if it stays there for more than a minute, it's like, all right, this is now.
Wow, you stay there for a whole minute?
I give these guys a chance.
I got about
give
6 seconds. 6 seconds, and I'm like, done. No tolerance.
Sometimes they break away, but yeah, usually it's a pretty arduous affair, and just keeps going on and on and on.
It does, and there's no way out. That's the problem. It's genuinely used to score. It can be used to score sweeps. But then from there, Corey, the truth is that a lot of people, once they held on to that position, they're not going to give it up, right?
Yeah, and here's, I think, my opinion about not just lapel 50-50 guard, but all lapel guards, is there should be a time cap to use that position or give that grip up. So I feel like
a shot clock,
right? I feel like if you get to, let's say, squid guard or worm guard or deep reverse daily worm, whatever you want to play.
Ooh, breaking out the guard terms. Look at that.
If you get to that position, you should feel pretty confident in your ability to attack your opponent, right? Like once you get that position, it's pretty much your sweep is locked in. If you're not going to use that in 15 seconds, there should be a point at which the referee takes that lapel from you. Same thing in...
Like they're doing in BJJ Stars.
Same thing in squid guard or lapel 50-50, whatever lapel guard you want to invent. There should be a moment at which you're being inactive with that. That's exactly stalling. That's the definition of stalling.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So let's talk about the likelihood of this happening. The IBJJF literally never implement rules or in response to positions or techniques unless that position or technique is considered to be dangerous. If there's a genuine chance of harm or injury as a result of that position, the IBJJF will not respond with any kind of ruling. And the reason being is, for me, actually a very, very good one. As much as a position can be pretty shitty and pretty hated, the idea is let jiu-jitsu figure it out. Because what'll happen is, after a while, people will come up with solutions for it. And the 50-50 guard is a great example of that. When it first came out, people were like, man, it just slows everything down. People couldn't go anywhere. They were stuck. Now people have all kinds of entries, exits, and attacks from there. It just took a while to figure it out.
The Baron Bowl is the same thing. That was back when I first started in 2013. That would have been going on for a couple of years, but I remember that was a big question, how to beat the Berimbolo.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's pretty much everyone knows how to at least identify it and stay away from it.
Yeah, it's a fundamental part of jiu-jitsu. And I'm not saying that lapel 50-50 should necessarily become a fundamental part of jiu-jitsu. But what I am saying is that the jiu-jitsu can often figure out the solutions. And that prohibiting certain grips or banning certain positions, it's a slippery slope. Because anytime you come into a position that maybe slows down the action a little bit, and you're like, no, you're not allowed to do that, you take it away, what happens? Well, you end up with judo. And that's exactly the argument that jiu-jitsu has used against jiu-jitsu for years and years, that they have systematically watered down their martial art through repeated and intrusive rule changes, that it is literally to the point where it is no longer effective outside of that hyper-specific competition scenario. Now, do we want the same thing for jiu-jitsu? I would argue no.
Yeah, and I agree with the sentiment, but when you talk about being relevant and useful outside of hyper sport specific, and we start talking about worm guard, well, those two things seem to clash to me a little bit. But I do agree completely with the idea of let the athletes figure it out. I think that's always a dangerous precedent to start saying you can't do this just for the sake of the viewer. And I know we're interested in that very much so.
Absolutely.
But it's not my first inclination, my first reaction is like, okay, how do we save the viewer's experience? But at the same time, I think there is a limit, and I think we might have found it with
Lapel 50-50.
Lapel.
Yeah, good point, man. Good point. For me, my final point on that one would be that jiu-jitsu rules are complicated enough. Do we need to add more? And whether that is prohibiting or whatever, it's just another thing to have in the rule book. And for me, that's when things get really, really complicated. Well, let's talk about the final proposed rule change. And for me, this is the wildest of all. And this is the title of today's show: heel hooks in the gi. Now, I've heard a surprising number of big names in jiu-jitsu calling for heel hooks in the gi. And it blows my freaking mind, man, because honestly, I think it's wild. Number one, I'm still stunned that the IBJJF permitted heel hooks for brown and black belts in their no-gi tournaments. Mm-hmm. I was amazed. I never thought I would see the day. I'm still happy and still elated that the fact that they decided to do that. It was one of the best things that they've ever done. Amazing. But heel hooks in the gi, that's another animal, man. That's a big fucking step.
It's pretty wild, right? Because as someone that plays predominantly in the gi, I wouldn't have the same, and I don't have the same approach no-gi. Whenever I end up training some no-gi rounds, my game looks pretty different. And so when the occasional, mostly visitor, comes to the gym and starts trying to rip on a heel hook while I'm in the gi,
that's an escalation.
Well, it's a little annoying because I wouldn't even beat it in the first place, right? I'm like, I wouldn't have put my, I wouldn't have come up into single leg X so willingly to try and pass that position, knowing that my heel is now in play. Something I wouldn't do as much no-gi. So I don't think it's as inherently dangerous as a lot of people say. Like, it's so easy to finish heel hooks in the gi. I'm like, well, there's also defenses that are now present because it's the gi.
Let's be honest, people are scared of heel hooks.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying a separate issue is like, is it that much easier to finish? I think there's maybe some things that make it easier, but also some defenses that become present, like I was saying.
Oh, man. Can you imagine if people start coming up with like alternative finishes and different grip variations?
There's probably some crazy ass lapel heel hooks you could wrap it around, just torque it.
That's what I'm thinking. It's like it could open that up. But you're right, there are defenses to those things as well.
So yeah, I just think I don't know. Maybe it is one of the last vestiges of like if you train the gi, you actually get better at no gi. Like heel hooks are too easy to finish in the gi. Maybe just from that same mentality that's very, very old school, let's say, and I don't know. I know I maintain that mentality, though. I don't like the heel hook in the gi. I think it's weird, but
my personal feelings are I don't either. But I'm stunned when I see people like Bushasher and Beatriz Mesquita saying that heel hooks should be allowed in the gi, because those are two big names. Those are two, multiple-time world champions. I think between them they've got something like 23 IBJJF World Championship gold medals, which is a ridiculous number. So when those people say things like that, I have to listen, because I'm like, man, these are like about as high up there as you can possibly get. In a couple of years from now, when they've retired from their competitive careers, I'm no doubt that they're going to be some of the thought leaders in jiu-jitsu. And who knows, when they have their moment and they work into positions of authority, whether they will actually push to have heel hooks in the gi. So you never know. 15, 20 years from now, it could happen. But I think that there's a certain, not just a stigma, but almost like there's a certain barrier against heel hooks, because there's jiu-jitsu the sport and jiu-jitsu the martial art. And everybody understands that jiu-jitsu the martial art is a little more all-encompassing. It has to be broader in its aspect. The truest jiu-jitsu has to think about things like self-defense. It has to think about going up against somebody who's in a different weight class to you. It has to think about leg lock attacks and other illegal submissions that aren't permitted under competition rules. And you will see that certain jiu-jitsu schools still train with boxing gloves on once in a while, and they'll do the drills where one person's punching and the other person has to defend themselves against strikes and take the other person down. The truth is that most jiu-jitsu schools focus purely on rolling and sparring because it's fun. And because it's safer, and because a lot of people don't want to get punched in the face. And the truth is that the majority of those people who train in the gi don't want to get heel hooked. They really don't. I don't if I'm training in the gi. Chase doesn't if he's training in the gi.
It's true.
What
Or if I'm
about-
not in a gi, I don't want to get heel hooked.
What about Corey? You're a dirty heel hooker. What do you think?
You know, I trained at a gym for not very long, maybe about 6 months, that allowed heel hooks in the gi. But I was there when they made that transition to allowing heel hooks in the gi.
That explains a lot
And-
about you, Corey. I wish I knew that back when you first started.
But
anyways.
you know what happened? We all got good at defending heel hooks. Like
Oh,
that's, I mean, that's what happens, right? You have a little extra friction, a couple extra grips, and all of a sudden, you never get heel hooked again.
That's a great point.
I think if you introduce a heel hook as like not this, exceptionally dangerous technique that can destroy your knee for 6 months, if instead it's just like an armbar or a kimura or whatever it is, you walk in on day one and this is a heel hook, it's part of jiu-jitsu.
No big deal.
Right.
You're just going to learn it like you would any other submission.
I do wonder.
Great point.
We talk all the time about the diverging paths of no-gi grappling and jiu-jitsu and how you have to, really pick a side at this point if you want to be a professional athlete. Could we rectify that by just sort of having the same library of techniques available, right? Like, it wouldn't be as much of a switch anymore.
No difference in the gi to no gi. Same techniques
less.
permitted. Same,
Yeah.
of course, less techniques in no gi because you wouldn't have the chokes and the lapel techniques. But no limit to the submissions you would practice in the gi. Therefore, it'd be the same. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. My my observation is this. People hate the 50-50 guard so much, they're willing to allow heel hooks in the gi to get rid of it. Because that is the argument. It's like, man, fuck your 50-50. I'm going to destroy your ACL because I don't want to sit here in this boring-ass position. Seriously, that is how strongly people feel about the 50-50 guard. I think it is mind-blowing that people will literally allow one of the most dangerous attacks in jiu-jitsu just to eliminate that position. But let's talk about the likelihood of it being adopted. Opinion. Just yes or no very quick. Will we ever see
widespread adoption? No. However, I'm begging you, someone out there in the world,
try it?
Let's do it. Let's see an
try
event happen because I don't think we have. I think it's pointed out in the Grappling Bulletin article that no one could think of. I'm sure it's taking place somewhere,
Right.
but I don't know it, and I want to watch it. So
It's certainly not in any major tournament or federation. We think that Metamoris may have allowed heel hooks in the gi in the early events, but nobody actually did it.
there's probably. I mean, I'm sure there's some
Yeah.
MMA fights where guys are wearing a gi that ended in heel hook somewhere.
Probably.
Some shoot boxing stuff or something, but
Yeah, there's probably some small events out there that did allow it, but
But
no
pure
major
grappling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
major tournaments or federations have allowed heel hooks in the gi that we've been able to identify. And I asked a couple of really good, historical experts about this. But Corey, thoughts? Will we ever see heel hooks in the gi in
That
competition?
one will never happen. Not at the highest levels of gi competition. I think maybe some events will or have tried it, but I think the major federations will keep that as a never gonna happen rule.
Yeah, great point. I also feel that, to be honest, I'm not sure that many people really want them either. Because there are already people who don't train no gi because they don't want to get heel hooks.
Yep.
So if we were to introduce heel hooks in the gi, well, maybe number one, it would just be normalized from day one, like Corey said, and they wouldn't have an issue with it. Or number two, it would actually prevent people from ever even starting. So two factors to consider. But very good thought experiment and really, really good to discuss, especially when you consider some of the comments in today's live chat. Let's work through some of these because Stephen A has a good comment here. He's like, literally, imagine heel hooks in the gi, you just couldn't do it. There's so much defense relies on slipping and posting to extract the legs that taking that away would shrek anyone who loses the Ashigarami battle. Interesting take. I like that. What else? Any other comments jump out at you, Corey, there? Here's a good one. Chan Morris says heel hooks in the gi say adios to the 50-50, just like I was saying. Yeah, that is a great point, that people literally are willing to introduce a 50-50 just to get rid... introduce heel hooks just to get rid of 50-50. What else we got?
We got breaking news here that Bushasher's MMA fight with Rugurug is once again postponed.
No, come on, man.
You heard it here second. Someone else published this just a moments ago, but
Oh, does it say why?
No, I haven't had a chance to read the article.
Literally live
but,
on air just after we announced the fact that Bushasher is fighting this weekend. He's now off. That's a shame.
Rug is cursed, man.
Yeah, he is. That fight was supposed to happen a year ago. It fell through. Looking at it here, Alex has commented in the live chat as well. Allowing heel hooks in the gi forces people to get better at defense instead of relying on the sweat to slip out. I think that's a good take. What do you think about that?
Reasonable.
Dean Hott, once again, heel hooks will literally eliminate the 50-50 guard completely. It will never be a position, and it will change the game a lot. True. Heel hooks with all the grappling ninja, heel hooks with all the friction of the gi pants just feels scary. I kind of agree on that one, actually. I'm not sure, because you're right, that no-gi, a lot of the escapes, and I've been training a lot of no-gi lately, and I've been putting myself into leg entanglements because I want to feel what it's like to hang out in those positions, know when I'm in, when I'm really in danger and when I'm not, and find out which leg entanglements are a threat and which ones are not. And the truth is, you're right, that you can hang out in a lot of positions very, very comfortably, but you can also slip out of a lot of attacks. It's not as easy to apply a heel hook as you think. It genuinely isn't, especially when things are sweaty. It's actually kind of hard. But if there was all that extra friction of the gi pants, yeah, I think those attacks would come on a lot faster.
Well, I mean, you got to think about Eddie Bravo training in gi pants for much of his career. I don't know if he still does.
Good point.
But he did forever.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm not sure that they were heel hooking each other that much, though, at that stage.
It was available.
It was. No, very true. Very true. Yeah, so some good comments today, some great conversation in our YouTube chat. Thanks a lot for joining us today. But that's it from this episode of the Grappling Bulletin podcast. We'll be back next week, but maybe with a different showtime. Stay updated for that. And we'll see you guys next time.